We are now live. Sound check. Truck Route Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, September 13, 2022. Sound check.
Testing one.
We are now live, Councillor, whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I want to call the meeting to order. Members of the public advise that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on our city's website. Any presentations or reports considered at this meeting are available on our city website, and members of the public can contact our clerk's office to acquire documents in any alternative format. As well, a reminder, our electronic devices are turned off, of course, and members are reminded of the 5-minute rule. If you're going beyond that, you can always come on for a second time. I'm going to note that quorum is present at this time for this truck route subcommittee meeting, and turn to you, Madam Clerk, with any changes you might have to the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's one added delegation request, item 6.1, Sean Barak, respecting the TRMP implementation schedule for today's meeting.
Thank you. And now a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor. I'm going to give you a thumbs up on this one anyway for now, Angela.
Excellent. And I don't believe that Councillor Merrill is with, and I see you, Councillor Nan, perfect. And that vote carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. And any discussion? I don't think there's any discussion on the agenda. We'll have an electronic vote. The vote was carried 6-0. And do we have any declarations of interest? I don't see any declarations of interest. So let's turn to the minutes of the previous meeting, the historic meeting of March 28th. I need a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes. That is moved by Councillor Pearson. Yeah. Are you talking to me, Councillor? I don't hear you, Councillor Pearson. Can I have a mover
Sorry.
then? You're going to move that, Councillor Pearson?
I will move it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies.
No problem. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor? There it is. Now a mover, that carries, Ange?
Yes, that vote carries 6-0.
A mover and a seconder on the delegation request for today's meeting. Moved by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor of the delegation request? Okay.
And that vote carries 6-0.
Okay, on to staff presentations. And just in advance, colleagues, I'll keep an eye on Angela McRae's, our clerk's speakers list in the chat for questions and comments after the presentation. We have Steve Malloy, our manager of transportation planning, and Omar Shantz with us as well to present at this time. So Steve and Omar, welcome back to the Truck Route Subcommittee.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Good afternoon, councillors and members of the public watching at home. I'm Steve Malloy, Manager of Transportation Planning. We're happy to be back again today to the Truck Route Subcommittee to present our evaluation framework for the approved truck route study. I do want to, first of all, acknowledge the delay in the implementation of the signs as approved by committee to move forward with implementation of the new established truck route in the city. We've been working with our partners in transportation operations and maintenance about implementation. They've been challenged with some staffing and resourcing issues, not just for the truck route implementation, but some other projects, as well as, of course, the importance of prioritizing the improvements to Main Street itself. So that, not to make excuses, but it's just facts of where we are today. And I will be deferring all those questions in terms of implementation to Mike Field at the appropriate time to discuss how we move forward with implementation. And there is a strategy to move forward with implementation. So we just wanted to do that public acknowledgement of the delay. We do prioritize this. We do want to move forward with it. We've just had some challenges within the city to accomplish it. So now, notwithstanding getting started in the implementation, moving forward with the signs, we're here to discuss the evaluation network of once that is in place and how successful it is. I know that we've been working in the background with our partners, Hamilton Police and Public Health and others to vet some of the criteria that we'll be presenting today. So we do appreciate your time. Omar will go through the quick presentation, and then we'll open up for discussion. And again, any implementation questions that may come, I will defer again to Mike Field. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and we look forward to hearing the discussion after we present the network. Omar.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, members of the committee and members of public listening to today's presentation and the session. My name is Omar Shams, project manager of transportation planning with the city of Hamilton. I will be presenting the Truckload Network Monitoring and Evaluation Framework for the subcommittee for their review and approval. Throughout the course of this presentation, we will have a quick few slides about the Truckload Master Plan 2022 and the approved Truckload Network, the Truckload Network implementation status, which Steve briefly discussed and talked about, the Truckload Subcommittee recommendation from the March 28th of this year, the monitoring and evaluation framework, the evaluation criteria and data collection, and the next steps. So the Truckload Master Plan was approved by the City Council, which the City of Hamilton's Transportation Master Plan, the strategic plan and the city's vision established that overarching principle for the Truckload Master Plan. And the main goal for this master plan was to support the Hamilton and regional economic prosperity and also coexist with the high quality of life for our communities, as well as the environmental and public health. The network, which was approved, was a ring road concept with positive guidance, and the main goal for this network was to utilize the Link and the Red Hill as the key goods movements corridors and improve the quality of life for those communities in the urban areas of the city. There were a number of changes that were introduced when compared to the previous Truckload Master Plan. Thank you, Councillor. I will try to fix that. There were some changes that were introduced into the Truckload Master Plan when compared to the previous version. Those were modification of some routes from full-time to part-time, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We identified some routes that required removal, and they were not as integral into the network for the goods movement. Like such as Sydenham, Wilson Street into the downtown, and North Service Road in the east end, and some other routes across the city. We introduced maximum 4-axle restrictions for routes in the central parts of the city, which does provide positive guidance for local deliveries. However, it restricts. Yes,
Omar, sorry to interrupt. You are cutting out probably more than you should. You've already turned your video off, I see. So maybe just slow down your delivery a little. It might help us and carry on and let us try to decipher the context. If you do cut out here and there, it won't cut out so much. Please. Thank you.
So through the chair, Councillor, just wanted to make note that my VPN has been acting up at home, so I'm not quite sure if Omar or anybody else on committee has been experiencing that as well. So that might be part of the technical challenge he may be having.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Steve. We actually had 4 meetings this morning and went off without a hitch, but maybe the rain and everything else is just bring her down just a little bit, Omar, and we'll keep an eye on it and an ear on it. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Take it from the start of the slide, please. Thank you.
Not a problem, Counselor. In this quick short break, I switched my audio system, so hopefully that helps.
Perfect. Yeah, and speak up just a little. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'll do my
Nice.
best.
Good. Thank you.
I will do my best. So we did apply some restrictions by truck size and by number of axles into the central parts of the city, which restricts large and heavy vehicle movement from the downtown, but it does provide positive guidance for local delivery trucks, which provides goods to the local businesses and to the communities. And lastly, the truck route master plan identified future routes, routes that will play a significant role into providing redundancy in the system, but since the current structure of the roads are not built to accommodate heavy loads, upon the improvements of the road bases, those roads can be identified as a truck route in the future. So the truck route master plan implementation was intended at the conclusion of the truck route master plan study and upon the 30-day mandatory review process through the EA. However, due to changing priorities and the staff resource challenges, it was slightly delayed. However, there are some requirements through that process, including an inventory, manufacturing, and removal and installation of all signs across the city of Hamilton. Based on that strategy that traffic operation and maintenance has put in place, the implementation will begin in January to April of 2023. We understand that all signs cannot be implemented at the same time, so there is a phased approach in the implementation of the truck route signage changes. We are prioritizing areas with highest impact, starting from the downtown, moving outward, and completing the citywide changes to the signage. And that changes in signage also requires update of the bylaw schedules, and all of that legislative initiatives will be undertaken by our counterparts in traffic operation and maintenance. On March 28th of this year, the Truck Route Subcommittee, upon approval of the Truck Route Master Plan, directed the staff to develop a framework and an associated criteria that can be used to evaluate some changes into the approved truck route impacts of the truck route onto the communities, and also inform the future revision of the truck route network and interim and 5-year to 10-year updates of the future truck route network. Also, that these criteria shall be presented to the truck route subcommittee by the third quarter of 2022, and the results of the evaluation to be completed no later than the end of 2024. So today we are convening to present that framework before the subcommittee for your review, and hopefully by the end of 2024 we have the results of the evaluation and present that before this committee. The monitoring and evaluation framework is a stepwise process, which does include a number of data collection. It does include public and stakeholder engagement. It will evaluate the approved truck route network and will inform the future revisions of the truck route master plan. The short-term evaluation will be the evaluation of the approved truck route network, and then every 5-year update of the master plan document. Based on the public and stakeholder engagement, there would be the potential for additional criteria to be added to this framework, which makes this an iterative process, and we are mindful of the importance of public engagement, and the truck route master plan was a great example of how important that was. So today we are presenting the indicators to this committee, and upon the approval and receive of the framework, we will proceed to initiate the discussions, the data collection efforts, and our public engagement and public surveys. The evaluation criteria, indicators, and the data collection process. We are looking into the evaluation from 3 different perspectives: from a community livability perspective, from public and environmental health perspective, and from economic prosperity perspective. These The selection of the criteria was informed based on the objective and the vision of the Truck Route Master Plan, which was recently approved. In addition, the availability of data and the feasibility of data collection also informed the selection of these criteria and indicators. So therefore, as part of the community livability, the safety and equity were the most important based on the feedback from the communities. So and safety is paramount for the city and through the Vision Zero process, and our commitment to improving safety across our transportation network. So we're looking into the number of collisions involving trucks with the goal of minimizing those numbers to the lowest and to a zero. With the also evaluating the exposure of vulnerable users to truck traffic along key goods movement corridors and key routes. We're looking into changes into the potential for safety improvement ranking for the truck routes and especially those routes that were removed as part of the truck route master plan. If there are improvements, that could be an evidence that there has been some significant improvements based on these changes, and that will evaluate the positive impact of the changes introduced into the network. We're looking into truck volumes passing through neighborhood development areas, and this is more of a qualitative and quantitative. We're looking from an equity lens of the impact on different population, from a demographic perspective, from the level of income, and also breaking down those complaints coming from these communities related to the truck traffic, including the noise, vibration, speeding, and other concerns to members of the community. We're also looking into the density of residents, specifically the vulnerable population living along truck routes, and how changes into the truck route system improve their quality of life in these communities. We have highlighted these communities, but that doesn't limit itself to these 11 communities. It is a citywide initiative, and we will be evaluating the impacts across the city. From an environmental and public health perspective, we are increasing our data collection efforts to air quality and measuring air quality, particle matters, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon dioxide, and all the elements, and measuring the improvement of changes in restricting truck routes into certain communities and shifting if that shift has happened into different areas. These are on select location that the city has been working with industry partners to collect that data. We are partnering with a private sector to look into the noise level and monitor the change in level of noise in select monitoring stations across the city, and more specifically into the downtown and densely communities to see the effectiveness of changes and restriction of the trucks by size and by number of axles. An important element is, from a safety and public health and environmental perspective, is the land uses within 50 meters of the truck routes. More importantly, the elementary schools as a sensitive receptor, the hospitals, secondary schools, and long-term care are a few examples of those facilities that we will be looking into evaluation. And of course, economic prosperity is important for us. We acknowledge that trucks bring goods, and goods are important as part of our economic uplift. But also, there are some, by removal of truck routes, we're seeing the potential for improvements into economic uplift in certain BIAs, in certain communities, and there is potential for increase in number of development applications along those routes that has been removed from the previous truck route. And those would be high rises, which can support densification in the city of Hamilton. We will be working with our partners in the Port of Hamilton and Hamilton International Airport to have some stats and data for the amount of and the volume of goods that are being moved through the port in the city of and the Hamilton International Airport, and how does that correlate with the truck route master plan and the truck route network and the changes that we're making. More importantly, with the commodity volumes and also the truck volume themselves entering and exiting the Port of Hamilton. We will be looking into the percent changes in the average truck trip length. We have been working with Geotab as one of the data providers for trucking industry, and they have robust data sets, telemetric-based data sets for all the truck movement in most of the regions, but more importantly in the city of Hamilton. And we are looking into the changes into the truck time for key business parks and goods movement terminals, understanding that how does the increase in the trip time is impacting the bottom line of their business and their operations. Public engagement is an integral part of our process, and it has been through the master plan. We have acknowledged that based on the feedbacks that we have received from the community and key stakeholder groups, we have been successful in terms of integrating those feedbacks, positive and constructive feedbacks, into our processes. So we are very appreciative of that. And this evaluation of the changes into the truck route system will also look into a public opinion survey, which will be launched by staff using the Engage Hamilton platform. Our goal is to reach to the largest volume of population and residents in the city of Hamilton, soliciting their feedback on quantitative and qualitative impact of changes into their everyday and the quality of life. We envision working with industry partners and the stakeholder groups and have targeted interview sessions, and there is no cap number on that. We will be reaching out to the largest number of stakeholder groups as possible to seek their input and how these changes has impacted them. Through the master plan, truck route master plan update process, we established a focus group, which was a good composition of members of the community, advocacy groups, and stakeholder groups. We will be having meetings with the focus group to have their opinion on how the changes have been effective and have impacted the communities positive, and having that as a measure of effectiveness as part of our evaluation process. And all of these would not be possible without engaging with Hamilton Police and having them around the table to provide us guidance, as they're the eyes and ears of the city and the decision we're making, and they're enforcing these, but more importantly in changing the driver behavior, as the truck drivers are trained professionals, and they require some changes into their behavior and education process as well. Data collection would be an integral part of our process, so we will be looking into truck volume counts at targeted locations, mainly in along major corridors that are currently truck route or those routes that has been removed from the system. We're looking into trip origin and destination, understanding the top routes that are being used and as part of the moving goods into major terminals and those destinations within the city, or trips that are originated within the city and their destination is outside of the city. Big data has been quite a key part of our evaluation as part of the master plan, but here it will play an important role. It will provide us with precise information on the truck trips, the length, the time, and other attributes of those trips. We will be working with Port of Hamilton and Hamilton International Airport on commodity flows, understanding how those commodity flows has changed before the changes we have introduced into the truck route network, and those that will happen afterwards. We are working with MTO, Ministry of Transportation on Ontario, on a commercial vehicle survey, and we have identified certain locations within the city of Hamilton's transportation network, which is a survey-based questionnaire asked through a number of locations across the city, and this will inform the origin, destination, and the movements of goods through the city of Hamilton. And obviously, air quality and noise level data will be quite important for this evaluation from a public health and environmental health perspectives. As part of this report, staff recommends the framework and the associated criteria for the evaluation of approved truck route network described in this report before you received it approved. That staff be directed to operationalize the truck route evaluation framework and all of the required data collection and public and stakeholder engagement. And in order to start the analysis in early 2023 through the years 2023 and 2024, and report back to this committee no later than the end of 2024. And that an upset limit of 20,000 associated with the implementation, promoting a public opinion survey be funded from a project, which is the Transportation Master Plan Modeling and Monitoring. There is no additional requirement for additional funding. We do have that money available for initiating the public engagement process. And then an estimated upset limit of $30,000 be allocated to conduct targeted data collection, and that is also available through funds in the traffic count program with the City of Hamilton. And lastly, that the outstanding business list respecting the Public Works report in March and April of 2022 be removed. That the monitoring and evaluation framework has been presented before this subcommittee. In terms of the next steps, upon the implementation of the truck route network and the update of the bylaw in first quarter of 2023, we will initiate the engagement with the public and stakeholder groups, and in parallel, we will initiate the truck route, the truck data collection and any other relevant data collection to inform the evaluation process. And by the end of 2024, present the results of the evaluation before the subcommittee. And that concludes my presentation for this, and we will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nothing from you, Steve, then? You're just here for Q&A? Steve Malloy?
That's correct. Yes, through the chair.
I think you said that's correct. I'm going to assume it anyway. Our first speaker is Councillor Nan.
Thank you, through you, and perhaps staff might need to.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we did.
Sorry, Councillor Nan.
Perhaps a
Sorry,
solution.
Councillor Nan, hang on just a sec. Steve, you're really cutting out, so we might go to you and measure that as it happens. Go ahead, Councillor Nan.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps a solution could be for staff to call in. I know in this instance, I've had this happen several times, and calling in old school on the phone can help clear up the audio. So first of all, thank you to the staff team. I have to say it feels so good to see the evaluative framework that aligns with all of the existing citywide policies and integrates the social health, environmental lens as well as the economic lens. And I have to say, as the vice chair of this committee, I truly appreciate the work that went into this evaluative framework. And I also have to say, as a Ward 3 councillor, many residents do as well. Three quick questions, one specific to the evaluative framework, and then two questions. One kind of toggles in, and the other one is about the overview comments that Steve had shared up front. So first of all, on the framework, in terms of the community feedback portion, you presented that we would be using the Engage Hamilton portal, which has been fantastic. But we've also been talking about the digital inequity that exists inside that, and wondering, one, what were some of the other engagement tools staff used up to this point? Could those be used in the evaluative framework in terms of soliciting residents' feedback? And any chance there could be a call-in number where people could do that? Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor, we do acknowledge that there might be some digital inequity available, and we have, through the master plan and through the pandemic, we have learned that there has been some issues, and we have adjusted our practices accordingly, one of which was engaging with the neighborhood associations, and through them and through the ward constituency offices, we have reached out to those members of public who does not have access to the digital devices or systems. We have received feedback from them, and we can certainly establish a phone line, and my extension is always available to members of public to reach out to myself, and we would be more than happy to receive the feedback and integrate that as part of the overall framework.
Excellent, thank you. In terms of enforcement, which was talked about in terms of HPS's role as a stakeholder at the table, as the kind of eyes and ears on the ground, but you also mentioned from the perspective of enforcement. Could you just overview what enforcement will look like moving forward?
Um, through the chair, Hamilton Police has we have increased our collaborations with Hamilton Police in terms of improving safety on the roads and in terms of more specifically on the commercial vehicle side, as they have a new unit, and the new unit has increased their efforts on ensuring not only the violations of the truck routes does not happen, but also the vehicle safety and inspection and all the other checklists that Ministry of Transportation and Highway Traffic Act requires truck drivers to abide by. Um, we have this will be a two-stage. The initial stage of enforcement will be an education piece. We would like to inform the drivers on the changes into the bylaw and changes into the network. And after a month or two of the education efforts, then they will have staff members in collaboration with MTO to enforce these the violations if they occur. And um, as I was speaking today with the Hamilton Police responsible and in charge of the traffic safety unit, they have increased their collaboration the Ontario Provincial Police with the Ministry of Transportation, and they have had some great success in terms of removing those unsafe trucks from the network, and they have increased those collaboration by on a monthly basis, and they will have certain critical spots around the key ports and key truck generators across the city of Hamilton to ensure that not only violation of routes happens, but also safety of the vehicle and other road users are also look after.
Thank you for that. And the last question speaks to the implementation piece, and I appreciate the context up front in terms of the not competing priorities, but aligned priorities, and the reality at the end of the day in terms of staffing, resources, and having to put one project before the other. Are there any other anticipated delays in implementing the truck routes? And also, is there anything regarding a regulatory framework? I might have mischaracterized that as I was trying to help residents understand why, after 5 months of approval, we're at this stage of approving an evaluative framework, not as a critique, but just trying to help educate the public as they've been inquiring about it. Is there anything inside of a regulatory framework that also draws this process out, or is this now just a matter of getting the approvals, that's the appropriate timelines for implementation that is wholly governed by our ability to staff it? Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, Mike Field, Acting Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. As far as the regulatory requirements, the only thing we require is the bylaw changes to formally make those in effect. And at this moment, we're planning on bringing the bylaw and an associated report to the very first opportunity for the new council in I believe it's in November. At the moment, we are just about to issue the supply and installation contract for all of the signage. So that will be in place. We need to align the implementation or the installation of the signage with the bylaw, passing of the bylaw, because we cannot pass the bylaw without having signage in place, because we would have obviously non-ability to enforce the bylaw because the signage would be incorrect. We did suffer some unexpected resourcing and competing priorities this year. We were initially hoping to implement the signage changes in the fall, and unfortunately, we've had to push that out until the early new year, possibly earlier than that. We're looking at every possible opportunity to expedite the implementation. Right now, it's kind of worst case scenario as far as when I project it will be finished into the springtime. I think Omar and Steve also mentioned that we're implementing this in phases, so we will look to implement what we all can agree as the most priority locations, so the downtowns and urban areas first, and then move out into the rural areas. So then excuse me, when you think about the schedule we proposed, April is more towards when the rural parts of the city will be done, and that means that early on the downtowns will be completed first through there. I don't expect at this moment, I don't see anything on the horizon. Anything is possible, of course, these days, but
Right.
I don't see any projects that are going to interfere with the project plan that we've assembled for the implementation of the truck route master plan.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Those are my questions, Chair. And when it's the appropriate time, happy to move the recommendations.
I will turn to you for that. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the presentation, but quite frankly, I was a little bit on the shocked side. Omar, if you went to slide 3, I want everyone to understand that we had a whole slew of residents on Dickinson Road, very, very organized. The staff met with them twice before the official truck route meetings, and at the last 3 meetings, they collectively spoke at our truck route meetings. And it was my understanding at the last meeting that we have removed any reference of Dickinson from the truck route, which is why the residents are not here today. And yet when I'm looking on slide 3, it looks like future route. It's right back to where it was before. So why is Dickinson back on, please? I thought we had corrected that.
Through the chair, Dickinson Road is not back on the truck route network as a future corridor, Councillor. The section west of Upper James, which is part of the Airport Employment Growth District, will be a potential for a truck route based on all the employment and the industrial or airport-related activities that will occur. But the portion east of Upper James, all the way up to Trinity Church, will not be a truck route. Hence why we had a motion passed through the subcommittee and the council in looking into the assessment of that airport to Red Hill Valley Parkway connection, which is a conceptual connection identified through the transportation master plan for the citywide. So peace of mind, Dickinson is no longer a truck route, and it will not be a truck route in the future.
Thank you so much, Omar. My apologies. I misread that. So I'm glad for the public record that that's out there. Anything east of Upper James is not going to be considered, but anything west would be because it's within the AGD lands. Thank you so much for that. The second thing I have is Omar or Steve or whoever can answer this. In the rural area, we have septic systems and we have well water, we have cisterns, which means that the septic trucks and the water trucks are a necessity. Those are the basic needs for the rural residents. And we're finding lately that the police are starting to pull them over on non-truck routes in the rural area. It's always been my understanding that both septic and water trucks are considered as a necessity. And that as long as they take the shortest route and they are en route, then it shouldn't be an issue. So can somebody please confirm that for me, or do we need to refine the bylaw to reflect that, please?
Through the chair, as long as they're following the shortest path to their destination and the nearest truck route, they are not in violation and they're in conformity with the bylaw. But if their bill of lading, which identifies where their destination is, does not indicate that they are making a local delivery, then Hamilton Police will issue tickets for that. And as long as they can provide any sort of proof of local destination deliveries, they're in safe. They have not been identified as a emergency vehicle, as we only have them as the city-owned and utility vehicles through the Hamilton traffic bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So just for my colleagues' edification, septic trucks actually go to the transfer station on Upper Ottawa. That's how they empty their trucks. And water trucks are actually usually it's Mud Street or just outside the urban boundary, but sometimes just within the urban boundary, they have to load up for water. Rymal Road is a perfect example for that. So so they're not considered essential, but our city trucks are. Anybody that's got a city labeled truck, they're allowed to be on the off route no matter where they're going. Obviously EMS anywhere they want to go, but septic and water trucks do not have that same privilege. Is that what you're telling me?
Through the chair, the city-owned vehicles and utility companies that are delivering services to the city residents, they are only exempted if they're actively engaged in the delivery of services. But if they're not doing delivering any services, or they're not actively engaged into those activities that they're assigned to, then they still have to follow the truck route system, and they have to follow the shortest path to the nearest truck route. And they're not identified as essential; they're only identified as emergency vehicles. So there's two different definitions in the bylaw. But we do acknowledge that water trucks and septic trucks are essential, and hence why we have that provision in the bylaw to require them to follow the shortest path. As long as they can provide a proof of local destination, Hamilton Police will not issue any tickets.
Omar, would you do me a favor, please? Could you send me that portion of the bylaw? Because our water trucks and our septic trucks, for some reason recently, and I haven't had this in 12 years, are starting to get pulled over quite often now, and they're just doing their jobs. They're going to the person's home, or they're going to the transfer station. So either way, it's still part of their route. And I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. Those are my questions. Oh, the last one, sorry. And I know I'm sounding like Councillor Jackson right now, but what is it going to take to get the no truck route signage instead of the passive permissive signage? I'm on the Niagara Conservation Authority. I work with Haldeman and Niagara politicians, and they're all saying that their trucks that come through their counties are all getting frustrated when they have to come through Hamilton, because Haldeman and Niagara all have the no truck zone, no truck route. Don't go here. You're a truck, you don't go here. It's not the permissive at all. So it becomes it's almost like going from one country to another. Again, I know we keep asking this, but I just don't understand why we're doing permissive instead of just, here's your truck route, don't go this way. I just don't understand why it can't be that simple. Anybody have a comment? That would be great.
Omar or Mike or someone. Simple and consistent with neighboring municipalities.
Through the chair, we looked into consistency with adjacent municipalities in terms of signage, but also continuity of routes. We also identified that permissive system, it's easy to provide maps of them for trucking industry to follow, and municipalities like Toronto are looking into converting their systems into aggressive routing option. Major cities, and especially cities with larger ports and goods movement activities, they tend to have permissive systems, which provides that direct and positive guidance and better mapping tools for their goods movement industry. Um, it has been the unfortunate of our adjacent regions, given that their road fabrics falls into two different tiers. That has been an issue, but I will also let Mike and or maybe Steve to comment on that.
So while we're waiting, Mr. Chair, what I heard was neighboring municipalities are still using the more simpler, and I understand about the mapping. That's not a problem. The map doesn't change. But what I'm understanding is a typical truck driver is going down the road, and permissiveness versus no trucks can get very, very confusing going from one county to the next. Toronto may be looking into it, but they still haven't done it. I still don't understand why it seems like we're the only municipality in our own little island, and it's extremely frustrating for both the residents as well, not just the truck drivers.
And Councillor Johnson, is it something that you would be inclined to perhaps pursue via form of a motion for the rural routes, which really would be a lot easier than tackling permissive versus non-permissive when you get into the area that Omar is suggesting, where you get into the the industrial core, where we're getting a whole lot more? Would that be something maybe you could consider? And we'll wait for more staff answers too.
Yep, that sounds like a plan for me.
Okay. Mike, were you going to come in? Mike Shield?
Yes, please, shoot through the chair.
Shield?
I what we've done in the past, as many of you are aware, especially the rural councillors, is we evolved over to what I'll define as maybe a hybrid signage system over the years. when we do see areas or roadways that trucks don't belong and there's a constant issue, we will install no trucks allowed signs, kind of on an as-needed basis within those rural areas where there's a problem. I think that that's a good practice for the most part, but I'll leave it to perhaps my friends in transportation planning to comment on permissive versus otherwise as far as changes to the signage plan.
Okay. So one more comment from staff, transportation planning, and then we'll get to Councillor Wilson.
Sure. Through the chair, I'll take a stab at it. So, Councillor, I think we could take a, I guess, problem-oriented approach to it. If there's specific routes where this is an issue, we could take a look at it. I think that the concern is there's so many cross-boundary roads that it could present a signage problem that may be confusing because we do have a hybrid system. So if there's problem areas, we could certainly take a look at those on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, from our knowledge, from what we have received, it hasn't been a prolific issue. But if there's certain issue areas, we can certainly take another lens and take another look at that. Those problem areas and address those at those areas, similar to what Mike was saying. But this is something that we did evaluate as part of the overall truck network study, and we came back with the signage approach that was approved by this committee. So if there's just specific issues as hotspot locations, we can definitely take a specific site-specific approach to it. But we want to ensure as much consistency with our signage system as possible.
Thank you. Last comment before I sign off, thank you, is I hope the police were involved in that consultation, because I've also heard from my own crime managers how frustrating it is for them to monitor and enforce something that it just changes, like I said, from one county to the next, and it's very frustrating. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to staff for your work to date. I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate the questions of the previous councillors who were asking them. I just want to make sure I understand some of the granular thing, and I apologize if it's really obvious in the report, but I may have missed it. The base data, do you have it at present so that you're able to offer that evaluation as presented out in the framework? Or because I thought I saw something when I read it that you're going to be doing data collection in 2023. So I'm just seeking clarity, Chair, for how extensive our existing base is prior to the changes. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor, we do have some data which were used as part of the Truckload Master Plan study. As part of this evaluation, we're doing targeted studies in areas where changes were implemented across the network. So if a route was removed, we're comparing those the impact of changes in comparison to our base data sets. But in addition to that, we're collecting additional data for air quality and noise level to have a better understanding of how those changes are occurring. And that data collection, part of that has started already, where we're collecting some samples in these specific areas before the implementation comes to an effect.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was asked a question by a resident. Is it only the Hamilton Police Service who have a role in enforcement? The reason I ask this is part of this exercise throughout was really an amazing effort and leadership on the part of community groups and residents who are providing their own documentation of trucks compromising safety and clearly presenting a risk, particularly to children en route. Are we just strictly reliant on the police service traffic enforcement unit, or is there an opportunity to extend that role, and is there an opportunity for residents to continue to provide that kind of evidence along with license plates, truck company numbers moving forward? Thank you.
Through the chair, enforcement of commercial vehicles does require specialty, and there is additional training even for uniformed police officers before they're out and enforce commercial vehicles, which fortunately Hamilton Police Services has increased those educational efforts and training for their officers, and within their traffic units, more officers on as we speak are getting trained for commercial inspections and enforcement. Unfortunately, that authority cannot be delegated to other groups like bylaw officers or any others. But there is some collaboration with the Ontario Provincial Police and MTO, commercial vehicle inspectors. And when initially we referred to that increased collaboration, that means Hamilton Police have a monthly blitz on targeted areas with the assistance of Ministry of Transportation inspectors to enforce the safety, but also the violation of the truck routes and Hamilton local bylaws. So it's a joint effort, but it can only get contained within the Hamilton Police Service department and cannot be extended.
Thank you through the chair. I think someone's hand's up, and I beg your pardon because I don't know who it is. Chair, Steve. Yeah.
It's Steve.
Yeah, hi, through the chair, Councillor. I think what would be advantageous is to leverage the community groups who are engaged, and if there's opportunities to collect that feedback for hotspots, to feed back to Hamilton Police, to engage MTO, that would probably be the best value of their time and have better outcomes. So that's probably in my headspace, at least, probably the most practical way to keep them engaged and keep them communicating, because obviously the police can't be at all locations. Only certain people can enforce, but they could do a better job if they have better information. So if we can find some sort of outlet to channel their input and evidence that they collect of photos or consistent companies or license plates that are violating, then I think that would help resource the police to go to certain hotspots and then to enforce.
Through the chair, thank you, Steve. Just a gentle recommendation then in your outreach as part of the evaluation, if you could make it really crystal clear and easy in offering active residents, caring residents, an identification number and unit to where they can call with these hotspots. I would appreciate that because I've been sent photos of trucks along Aberdeen in the middle of the night, going up the Queen Street Hill in the middle of the night, and citizens are wondering what opportunity they have, which they feel with clear evidence of violation, although they, of course, we don't know whether it's the most direct route, but given the exception and the time, I think it's pretty clear that it's not. So if you could include that in your outreach to make sure it's part of the evaluation, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Jackson, you are next.
Thank you, Chairman Farr, and thank you, Senior Project Manager Shams, for the update and thorough presentation, and your input as well, Manager Malloy and Acting Director Fields. So just a couple of quick questions. Senior Project Manager Shams, similar to Councillor Johnson, I just want to make sure locations like the Kenilworth access concession that had been truck route bans and or with concession, limited number of trucks for delivery, that is still in place with this report before us today, please, through you, Chairman Farr.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor. Kenilworth Act has been restricted for trucks and has not been changed the status of it since then. And on Concession Street, which was a truck route, we have implemented that 4-axle restriction, which limits only local delivery to the BIA and hospital and other destinations along that corridor. That designation has not changed.
Much appreciated. As now all of council, to my delight, has joined many of us from years gone by in saying the absolute need for the two transportation corridors of the Red Hill Valley Parkway and the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. And with what I will envision and probably predict, there will be increased volumes of traffic, if for no other reason than the additional truck route, master truck route changes that will encourage and legally require the heavier trucks to use both of those transportation corridors. Through you, Chairman Farr, to Senior Project Manager Shams, will there be some monitoring of the traffic counts and volumes on both Red Hill and the Link? Because when both roads opened 25 years ago for the Link and 15 years ago for the Red Hill, volumes were estimated at that time projected to be about 40,000 vehicles a day. I believe there are around 70,000 vehicles a day. So I'm just wondering, will there be monitoring over your 2-year period of time before you report back to the new truck route subcommittee, whoever's here? Through you, Chairman Farr, please.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor. Those two corridors are the spine of goods movement now based on the proposed changes, and we're encouraging all the large and heavy vehicles to use them. So obviously those are the two key targeted areas for us to monitor, from a truck volume change, from an air quality, and the noise level changes. And that is a good evidence of being diverted from the downtown and inner urban areas into these two corridors, what positive or negative impacts are being introduced to these corridors in terms of the delays, in terms of increased travel time. And that's where the power of big data and the telemetric devices play as part of our evaluation process, that we're not only looking into the distance which is set, but also the delays and the volumes of these vehicles on these two corridors. So to reassure you, yes, these are part of our targeted
That's good to hear. And
study
of course,
areas.
thank you, Senior Project Manager. And of course, for some of us that have always supported the building of these two roads and always felt from the get-go they should have been with the original design to 6 lanes, whoever's on council next term, I think will be important with that big data for bolstering the case of the potential expansion of both roads if required with the increased amount of truck traffic. Last question, Chairman Farr, through you to Senior Project Manager Shams. Police involvement. If you recall months ago at our last meeting when we adopted the ring road concept unanimously, police were not present in spite of your best efforts to get them here until, forgive the little bit of boasting here, until I directly reached out during the debate of the truck route subcommittee directly to Chief Bergen, and he immediately sent the sergeant involved with overseeing and enforcing vehicles on the truck route. So my question, I guess, is to ensure police are continuously at the table. They will be enforcing. I know they have other priorities along the way. Traffic is incredibly high on their list. I can assure you of that from what my community is telling me and the responses from police as well. But I guess I want to know and ensure that there will be the availability of Hamilton Police Services specifically for enforcing the new truck route master plan. Through you, Chairman Farr, that's my last question.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor. As of this morning, I was speaking with the surgeon in charge of the traffic unit. Unfortunately, due to yesterday's incident, their resources has been reallocated, and the individual cannot participate into this meeting. But they have reassured me that they have the resources and staffing where available when we're needed to enforce commercial vehicles. Obviously, they or some limitations in terms of status and the amount of trucking activity happening in different areas of the city. But to the best of their ability, they will try to address those community concerns and ensure the safety of all road users are maintained across our transportation network.
Terrific. Those are the type of questions I need to raise my comfort level overall with the report, Chairman Farr, and whoever's on council and on Truckload 2 years from now to hopefully hear how the project has unfolded. Thanks, Chairman Farr.
All right, thank you. Great questions, everyone, so far. Councillor Pearson, you are next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Farr, and Omar and all the staff. Thank you so much for all the information. Excellent work. It's been a long haul. I can tell you, being on the initial truck route subcommittee many moons ago. So I guess my question to Omar would be with regards to the North Service Road and the signage, because and I recognize that signage has not been installed yet, but I'm wondering how staff and whoever's on council in the next term, that staff work with them, how are we going to identify the truck traffic that will go over the Millen Road overpass or the Fruitland Road overpass, that they have ample notice ahead of time that they cannot go westbound on the North Service Road? Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Omar.
Through the chair and Councillor, we will be following the Ontario Traffic Manual guidelines, and those guidelines establishes the advance notices and establishes the signage location, installation, and all the relevant requirements. But there would be sufficient guidance in advance notice to those truck drivers not to proceed either westerly or service road or northerly on Mellon Road and all the other overpasses. So there will be sufficient signage, and the signs will be meeting all the AODA requirement, ensuring that the conformity is to the best possible. And I will also leave to Mike if he has some comments on that respect, but I can just give you that assurance based on my technical expertise.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Omar. Mike?
Through the chair, I don't have anything to add what Omar said there. He got it just right. But like I mentioned earlier, if we do find that there's problem areas, then we can assess those after implementation to see if there's any supplementary signage that we may need to put in.
Excellent. I appreciate that very much, because it's going to be a difficult area to kind of rein in on the transport truck use. The second is, and I just want to tag on to Councillor Johnson's concerns of the, the signage being, green of being able to go between a certain time, and the red of not being able to be, this is not a truck route at a certain time. So I have had similar concerns. I know that I've had an area where I've had the restrictive sign installed, and it seems to have worked. On the campaign, I'm getting concerns on other streets, one being Fruitland Road from number 8 to Barton, that there is still truck traffic. And I don't know, because I went and had a look myself of the signs. They are the passive signs, and they're really not visible. So I think that might be one of the issues, is that they see a green circle, the trees are green, the leaves are green, everything's green, but they don't read the rest of it. So I am going to express that concern as well, that we look at how we become more restrictive in putting the restrictive signs up when we have truck routes that have specific times where you can or cannot be on the roadways. That's my 2 bits today, Mr. Chairman. I know we've come a long way. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Councillor Pearson, I'll get you to move to receive the staff presentation, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Then we're going to defer. We're going to move to defer approval of the report until such time as we've heard from our friend Sean, who is our only delegation and who is coming up next.
And the vote to receive the presentation carries 6-0.
And who would like to move? Hello, Sean. Who would like to move holding off on this report until after the delegation? Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All in favor?
And that vote carries 6-0.
All right. And Sean Burke, you are next as our delegate today. Once
Thank
again.
you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. We can hear you great.
Great. Thanks for your time, Chair Farr. I would normally delegate to this group with a formal presentation with data. However, I think that we've all spent a lot of time on outlining why we need a new truck route system. And we've now moved to the how and the when. And I just want to make a quick note about the how. It concerns me that the only enforcement opportunity is by police. The main concern being that they will not have the capacity or desire to enforce the truck route. As you all know, the Hamilton Police have a long list of concerns they're dealing with daily, and I don't think any of us thinks enforcement of this should take precedence over everything else and necessarily divert them from other issues. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can enforce without fines at a more local level. For instance, bylaw officers or other groups monitoring corridors and there being a reporting mechanism that perhaps results in warning letters to repeat offenders. No fines necessarily associated with it, but just to give them the knowledge that people are watching. That's just one thought. There could be others. I wanted to toss that idea out there. I do think that there's a lot of groups who would be very eager to take part in helping to make sure enforcement of this new bylaw is successful. Now moving on to the when, I would normally avoid anecdotes, but I think the impact of trucks, the direct impact of trucks to residents is an important consideration here. We live about a block from Victoria Avenue and experience the negative effects of trucks every day. We can't keep our windows open at night because the sound of them shifting through 12 gears as they accelerate from a red light wakes us up. Engine brakes are even worse, less frequent, but it does happen. Last week I was riding a bike on Victoria. I went out of the bike lane to make a turn, and a P&H milling truck pulled up behind me at the red light and was honking at me because I was in his way. The trucks just kind of treat our streets as their workplace, which it is in a sense, but with this new bylaw, the location of their workplace will change. And every day, just even driving in the city, you're behind a line of these trucks. It takes them a long time to accelerate from a red. They occupy entire intersections as they turn. So even as a driver, it's a huge impact to the ability to move around the city. So I just want to mention these stories not to garner sympathy, but to show that the impact of the trucks is real and it's daily. And I'm just one person of tens of thousands who have been living with the air and noise pollution and inconvenience and danger of these trucks for decades. The process we've been going through has been extremely long. Residents and staff and council have collectively poured thousands of hours into helping reach a positive outcome here, which I think we can all be proud of. So my other request today is to urge city staff to find the fastest way possible to roll out this implementation. The study itself was delayed quite a bit, I think a bit by the pandemic, but also the consultant had a bit of a failure in delivering what they were asked to, which stretched things out by several months. All of this was in spite of all of the hard work that we've all put into this process. So it's already been delayed. We've been waiting a long time from when we started this 3 years ago, and we're told, you know, there's a process, let's follow the process. So implementation was supposed to start in fall, and I'm just wondering if there are creative ways that we can get this done faster. Perhaps the bylaw can be signed into effect sooner, and city staff can direct our own workers to remove any signage that would be in contravention of the new law. And perhaps initial police enforcement could be without tickets, just with warnings until all the full signage is implemented. Anything that we can do to even start down the road of removing the trucks from the streets would be very important. So I was happy to hear that focusing on downtown first in terms of implementation is being considered. I do think that probably that's going to have the best ROI for direct impact on the highest number of citizens. But maybe there are some other ideas that we can get this done before the end of this year instead of it being next spring. So that's it. Thank you, everyone, for allowing all of us to have an opportunity to be a part of this. I am really excited about the implementation of this. I've been eager about it all summer. So anything that we can do to get that done as fast as possible, and any way that we can create an enforcement plan that doesn't place the entire burden upon police would be greatly appreciated and have a huge positive outcome, and would be worth the effort. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate your delegation, your advocacy over the many, many years you've been part of Hamilton advocacy on this and other items as well. Cycling comes to mind. I know our staff were questioned fairly extensively by the committee members on a speedier implementation. I'm sure you appreciated those questions, and I know staff heard us. I'll just have a quick question if I'll pass the chair to Councillor Nan very quickly through you, Sean. Is this enforcement request more the warnings you're speaking of only done in your eyes by Hamilton Police Services? I thought I heard you mention there'd be groups that would, did you say participate in some way in that exercise, or just be happy that we would be carrying that out? I didn't quite catch what you were saying there.
Yeah, I think that there are probably a lot of people who would donate time, community groups. So, for instance, the police have an aggressive driver hotline. You call, you report a license plate, etc. At some point, I don't know if it's the first time they hear about it or second. I don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but at some point, the driver gets some sort of, wagging finger from the police. Now, they can't get a ticket because the police didn't see the person speeding or doing whatever, but they at least can know that what they've done is being seen. So like a reporting process like that could work. Or if bylaw was, the bylaw department was empowered to, take a note of license plates, time of day, that sort of stuff, and have some sort of reporting mechanism that went into even a city letter that just said, hey, this is the truck route. Your truck was not following the rules. This is what the police will ticket you for if they see you doing that. And it's just so that it's going to take time for the drivers to get used to it. I think a lot of the drivers will just change because their GPS tool will tell them to go a different way. That would be very nice. But there will still be people who have just been driving without GPS for so long and doing it for so long that, they're not here watching this video. They might not even know that this is happening. So any sort of enforcement that doesn't require a cruiser to be sitting there, which we all know it's just, when these things happen, it's always when the cop's not there. So anything that we can do to get a little bit more creative, even if it doesn't result in fines, the goal shouldn't be to fine people. The goal should be to get them to stop doing the behavior. The fine is like the last resort. You did it, you pay. But hopefully people don't do it at all.
Thank you, Councillor.
Excellent. Yeah, no, all good suggestions. I'm glad you mentioned too the technology, the GPS, because down the road that'll be something that we're able to actually use against repeat offenders, I'm sure, as we've discussed in previous truck route subcommittees in the past years. So thank you. I do have now Councillor Wilson. I'll take that chair back, Councillor Nan, and Councillor Wilson is next.
Thank you. Thank you to Sean for doing a lot of heavy lifting, lots of heavy lifting, along with community members and their advocacy for healthier neighborhoods, safer streets. I actually, my question was to staff because I raised but I will take this opportunity just to make sure I understand fully what Sean is advocating, because my interest too is in enforcement. And I think, as Sean rightfully noted, we just do not have enough officers to be able to task to do this. And I wouldn't want anything to happen that would undermine the community's trust and confidence in this route, in the work that's been done, and the good intent and goodwill. So your suggestion is then, Sean, I think I asked and I was advised that only Hamilton Police Service have an enforcement capacity under the legal parameters. But are you requesting or suggesting that the documentation of violation could still be done by someone other than HPS and submitted for purpose of notice and or informing HPS of hotspots or in repeated occurrence. If you could just help me make sure I understand. Thank you, through the chair.
Yeah, my initial gut feeling was if you have a photograph of a truck that shows the license plate and it's a street that we all recognize as is not on the truck route, that should be evidence enough. I don't understand the legal side enough to know if that's true, but I don't think that there's anything stopping at least a warning from happening from information like that. So I guess maybe a closer study of exactly what the restrictions are in terms of how enforcement can happen. And maybe it is that to actually issue a offense ticket, it needs to be witnessed by an officer directly, but there are definitely other mechanisms. So I would say that any mechanism that we could think of that could be implemented that doesn't require the police to be monitoring every street, it's just not humanly possible for them to do that. We should consider that. And it would be great if staff can take a little bit of time maybe to look at what's possible there. I'd love if there was an app. Maybe we could be kind of the leader, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking
That might be kind of a tall order, but it would be newsworthy as well. And, you know, maybe we can do this in a way where people are looking at us as an example of how to kind of take this community initiative and turn it into a real impact.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know that the City of Boston and City of Chicago have been real leaders in the application of apps for reporting city service deficiencies, problems, repeats, etc. And at the appropriate time, thank you for expanding on that. At the appropriate time, Chair, maybe I'll just go back to staff and ask for their final comment on that. Thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Rosen.
Yeah, thank you. Move to receive the delegation, and then we'll go right to staff with your question and comments, Wilson, Councillor Wilson. That is moved by Pearson, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Through the chair.
Carries 6-0.
And Councillor Wilson, questions to staff based on the delegate?
Thanks, Chair. I thought I heard Steve get out of the gate early on my question. I think he heard the exchange, so maybe if you don't mind, Chair, would you recognize him?
Absolutely. Manager Steve Malloy.
Apologies for jumping the gun through the chair. Yeah, I think, you know, we're all about continuing the conversation. And obviously this is an important issue to enforce. And obviously, as everyone acknowledges, police can't be everywhere all the time. So I think it's an ongoing educational and outreach campaign that we can work with Hamilton Police Services to see what opportunities there are and what things that we can do, whether it's a portal or a hotline, or we have to discuss this with Hamilton Police Services if they're responsible or going to be put in a position to be responsible for who issues the letters and whatnot. So there's a lot of logistical things that we should need to discuss with them. And unfortunately, they're not here today to have that broader conversation. But I think the direction is taken that we need to continue that conversation of enforcement and how we can continue to engage the community on enforcement and what those opportunities and whether it's the use of technology or some other means to ensure that their voice is heard, and then work with you know, the back end of how we can put those voices into action and better outcomes. So I think that's the direction that I'm hearing, is continue to work with Hamilton Police Services and opportunities, whether that is a direction to come back to this committee and what those are, or if you would just like us to continue on and just see a result, that's the will of the subcommittee.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. just procedurally, if it would be in order, because I believe this will be the work of a future council. I would like to formalize that to uphold the credibility and the seriousness of this work. If I could kindly request through you vis-a-vis a motion, perhaps, and I'm not going to never word these things correctly, but if I could request that staff, in consultation with HPS and bylaw, and maybe our chief, our digital officer, technology person, if they could put their minds together for the purpose of when the next report is due to the new council on the evaluation stuff, if they could bring a report on the legal, the possibilities to provide for to inform enforcement and to provide the community with an opportunity to engage and record what they perceive to be offenses, something like that. If I just would like to formalize the direction. I'm not doing a very good job of it, but
I think we get it. You're definitely hitting all the points. And Angela, are you able to scribble something before the meeting concludes to that end? Okay, well,
Yes,
we'll wait.
absolutely. I'm working on it.
Yeah, we'll wait on that. I think it's good direction for the next term, and certainly ticks a lot of the boxes that our delegate, representing many other voices, I'm sure, had mentioned. So I'll just go over what's next here. Well, the motion will be next, and from there we will approve the report. And I'll seek a mover and a seconder on that. And then it looks as if following that, barring any other discussions that may emanate from the approval of the report, we will adjourn. I tried to stretch as good as I could there, Ange. How's it looking?
So to the chair, or through the chair, that staff be directed to research in consultation with Hamilton Police Services, Municipal Law Enforcement, and the city's chief digital officer options for enforcement and engagement of citizens.
Engagement around citizen involvement in enforcement. Does that sound right, Councillor?
Yep.
Engagement, yeah. Did you get that, Angela?
Yes, I think so. That staff be directed to research in consultation with Hamilton Police Services, Municipal Law Enforcement, and the city's chief digital officer on options for enforcement and engagement around citizen involvement and around recording traffic offenses. Not traffic, recording
Truck route violations?
truck route violations. Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Nan.
If I could, Chair,
Please go ahead.
through you to Elsie McCrae, you're just so tremendously awesome in your ability to do that. But if I could, not just citizen engagement, but I thought I heard from Mr. Rosen the capacity of other city staff, such as bylaw, like if they're out and about. We have people out and about, right? And those who are not formal law enforcement officers, if they continue to see on their out and about violations or hotspots, so that capacity in which to provide depository, if you will, of information and engagement and what means are available. But I think Angela's got it.
Okay, I think I do have the gist of it. It can be polished up a little bit more before it goes forward, but staff be directed to research in consultation with HPS, MLE, and the city's chief digital officer on options for enforcement engagement by bylaw and citizens around recording truck route violations. Is that the gist?
Bylaw, citizens, and police.
Yeah, and I think Councillor Nan has something in the chat. That's great. Real-time options. Yeah, thank you.
On the motion, Councillor Nan.
Thank you. I think the piece that residents are most expressing is a desire to be able to inform and to do that in real time. And so if we can integrate the identifying real-time options of truck route violations, that might help round out the innovations that residents are requesting. Thank you.
And if you could take the chair just very quickly, I'm supportive of the motion. And one thing we know, thanks to the good work of people like our own truck route master plan committee member Tom Jackson and Chad and others in the past, is that, a couple of years ago, Hamilton Police Services put together that traffic unit, 18 police officers. And what we have all heard as counselors, as elected officials over the years, and me for many years prior to that as a broadcaster, whenever I'd interview Chief Mullen and others, a lot of deployment each morning at various police stations stems from calls that come in. And so we clearly have a good, strong, healthy group of knowledgeable citizens who are going to be watching this closely, who are now emphasizing how important it will be that we get enforcement right. And so that's something to keep in mind, that deployment has a lot to do with the number of calls, not arrests, but they know where the issues are, where those so-called hotspots are, by the number of calls for the same issue in that area. So this kind of speaks to that, and I'm sure police will speak to that when this motion passes and is ratified by council, and staff have a little bit more direction on how to tackle this. So supportive. I'll take that chair back, and I don't see anyone else. So that motion now is on the floor. And it is seconded by Councillor Nan. All in favor? Really great work, Angela. Thank you so much.
It should be up now.
Yeah. And Councillor Nan, as we await the results of this motion, you wanted to move the report. I actually
And that
remember.
vote carries 6-0.
And that carries unanimously 6-0. And to move the report, Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Johnson.
I believe, sorry to the chair, I believe Councillor Johnson
Seeks to say a thing or two. Go ahead, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, no, my apologies. And I know I spoke about this earlier. As far as the no truck zone signs, I'm quite happy with what the staff have said, and we will work with that together. However, I still think that the sewage and water trucks should be considered essential, and that they should be exempted from a truck route within the rural area only. I'd like to put that motion on the floor right now. It's just in the rural area only. And then at council, I'll confer with my rural folks, my colleagues, to ensure that they're also on board with this. I really think that it's that important, folks. You ever had a septic system that you cannot use until it gets emptied? That means no one can flush a toilet or even do dishes or have a empty out water because your septic system won't allow it. And conversely, if you have a cistern that needs to be filled with water and you have no water in that house whatsoever, you can't imagine what that feels like. So I really believe that the sewage and water trucks should be exempted within the rural area only. This should not impact anybody else's wards. And I'd like to put that on the table right now, please.
Okay, just for a little clarity, my wife tells me no one ever flushes toilets or does dishes anyway. But Councillor,
Only if you have teenagers.
I want to just check with staff that this is not an amending motion to our March approval. I'm sure it's not, but we should be clear from either the clerk or Steve.
Well, that's fine. Then I can make it a standalone motion. That's fine.
Yeah, it's a certain kind of truck, and but it's still if it meets the category, then so through you to whomever, just to give us some guidance, does the wordage need to be an amendment, or can it be a straight up motion by the good councillor?
So through the chair, my thought is it could be a straight motion as we have to update the bylaw.
Right.
It's a motion to update the bylaw to reflect that wording that's been identified by the councillor.
And I'm good with that. My apologies. Thanks, Steve. My apologies. I will put that at the end before we adjourn, please.
We can put it now. And who's your seconder?
I think it's Councillor Pearson, please.
All in favor, unless no one else has anything else to say. All in favor.
Sorry, it's coming.
And as the vote comes in, I'm going to ask you next, are we approving the report as amended or just approving the report, the motions are separate and apart from what we're approving. I'm not sure of that either. And now the vote is up. Nice catch there, Councillor Johnson. Six oh.
Sorry, but I'm reading that staff be directed to amend the bylaw to remove sewage and water trucks be exempted. It shouldn't, the word remove should not
Yes.
even be there. It should be amend the bylaw to include, to allow sewer and water trucks be exempted. So instead of, so I wish that would be
Sorry,
worded properly, sorry. I know, Angela, my apologies, I didn't write it in.
For me today, that staff be directed to amend the bylaw to allow sewage and water trucks to be exempted in rural areas only.
Only, correct.
Okay. We could, the
Well,
vote,
let's just revote and that would probably be
Sure.
cleaner.
sure, I have to create a new vote, sorry, 1 second.
It's okay. Yep.
My apologies, everybody.
It's all right. You get it right the first time.
Okay, that vote should be up and correct now.
Thank you very much, Angela. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and my apologies, it just came out a little wrong.
6-0, still carries. I ask you now, Ange, is it an amended report, or I guess we can't really amend a report anyway, so we just move the report. We've already moved the motions, correct?
Correct.
All right, and that is moved by Councillor Nan and seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favor?
And that vote carries 6-0.
Now we move to adjourn. Thanks to everyone who participated today. Councillor Nan, Councillor Pearson, all in favor? And thank you again, Angela McCrae.
The vote should be up.
It is. Take care, everybody.
That vote carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone.